Debbie Reynolds' final words were caught on tape, and they're terrifying. Just one day after losing her daughter, Carrie Fisher, the Hollywood legend told her son something that gives us goosebumps. "I want to be with Carrie." Hours later, she had a stroke and died. Was it just a broken heart, or did she somehow choose to follow her daughter? The recording that shocked everyone close to her is finally being revealed. Debbie Reynolds was born Mary Frances Reynolds on April 1st, 1932, in El Paso, Texas. Her father, Raymond, worked as a carpenter for the Southern Pacific Railroad. Her mother, Maxine, took in laundry to help support the family. They lived in a small shack on Magnolia Street, struggling to make ends meet. Despite their hardships, Reynolds always described her childhood as happy. Her family followed the strict teachings of the Nazarene Church, which shaped her strong values and resilience. In 1939, when she was 8, the family moved to Burbank, California. Life in Burbank was different, but Reynolds remained an ordinary girl. She attended Burbank High School, joined the Girl Scouts, and became part of the International Order of Job's Daughters. She wasn't considered glamorous. A classmate later recalled that she rarely went to dances or dated. She admitted herself that she had no money, no fashion sense, and no training in the arts. At the time, no one could have guessed she would one day become one of Hollywood's biggest stars. That all changed in 1948. At 16, she entered the Miss Burbank Beauty Contest without any real expectations. She wasn't polished, didn't wear elegant gowns, and had never trained as a performer. But during the contest, she did an impersonation of actress Betty Hutton, which caught the attention of talent scouts from Warner Brothers. They saw something special in her. Soon after, Warner Brothers signed her to a contract. The studio head, Jack L. Warner, decided that Mary Frances didn't sound like a Hollywood name, so he gave her a new one, Debbie Reynolds. Her career started slowly. Warner Brothers cast her in minor roles, including a background part in June Bride, 1948, and a small speaking role in The Daughter of Rosie O'Grady, 1950. She wanted to prove herself, but the studio didn't see her as a priority. Due to her age and inexperience, Warner Brothers chose not to renew her contract. It seemed like a setback, but it turned out to be the best thing that could have happened. That same year, MGM took notice and signed her to a 7-year contract. She started at $300 per week, a huge amount for a teenager with little experience. Unlike Warner Brothers, MGM had a plan for her. They put her through intense training in acting, singing, and dancing. They believed in her natural charm and were determined to turn her into a star. Her first major role came in Three Little Words, 1950. She played singer Helen Kane, best known for the song I Want to Be Loved by You. The role wasn't large, but it got her noticed. She perfectly imitated Kane's famous boop-boop-a-doop singing style, which impressed both critics and audiences. The performance earned her a Golden Globe nomination for Most Promising Newcomer. It was a huge achievement for someone who had only been in Hollywood for 2 years. This film marked a turning point. MGM now saw her as more than just another contract player. They saw a future star. Debbie Reynolds was just 19 years old when she landed the role of Kathy Selden in Singin' in the Rain, 1952. It was a risky choice for MGM. She had little experience in singing or dancing, which were both crucial for the role. Studio head Louis B. Mayer insisted on casting her, even though Gene Kelly was skeptical. He reportedly asked, "What have you done before?" He wasn't convinced she could keep up with him and Donald O'Connor, but Reynolds was determined to prove herself. The film takes place in the late 1920s during Hollywood's transition from silent films to talkies. Reynolds' character helps Don Lockwood, played by Kelly, adjust to the new era while exposing the struggles of Jean Hagen's Lena Lamont, whose voice doesn't match her glamorous image. The role required Reynolds to act, sing, and dance, all while holding her own against 2 seasoned performers. When Singin' in the Rain was released in 1952, it performed decently at the box office but wasn't a major hit. Over time, though, it became one of the greatest movie musicals ever made. The American Film Institute later ranked it the #1 musical of all time, and in 2007, it was listed as the 5th greatest American film. Its humor, music, and sharp take on Hollywood's evolution made it a classic. For Reynolds, it was the role that changed her life. Learning to dance for Singin' in the Rain was the hardest thing Reynolds had ever done. Before being cast, she had never trained in dance. Gene Kelly, who co-directed and choreographed the film, was known for being a perfectionist. He He pushed everyone to their limits, but he was especially tough on Reynolds. She later said that working on the movie was so difficult, she compared it to childbirth. She trained non-stop, day and night, to meet Kelly's high expectations. Her background as a gymnast helped her with the physical demands, but it didn't prepare her for the precision of dance. One of the most exhausting sequences was Good Morning, a routine performed with Kelly and O'Connor. Kelly wanted long, continuous shots to capture the choreography without relying on editing. That meant every movement had to be flawless. It took over 40 takes to get it right. By the end of the 14-hour shoot, Reynolds' feet were bleeding. When she told Kelly, he reportedly responded with a simple, "Clean it up." At times, she was so overwhelmed that she broke down crying. One day, Fred Astaire found her sobbing under a piano. Instead of telling her to toughen up, he offered advice and helped her improve her technique. Reynolds never forgot his kindness. Despite everything, she refused to quit. She pushed through exhaustion, injuries, and the pressure of working with some of Hollywood's best. Looking back, she admitted that Kelly's tough training made her a better performer. Singin' in the Rain started as a modest success, but it grew into one of Hollywood's most celebrated films. It wasn't just a fun musical, it was a brilliant look at a turning point in cinema history. It honored the magic of filmmaking while poking fun at its challenges. Decades later, its legacy only grew stronger. The American Film Institute ranked it the #1 musical ever made. In 1989, the Library of Congress selected it for the National Film Registry, recognizing it as culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant. In 2022, Sight and Sound ranked it among the greatest films of all time. The songs became unforgettable. Good Morning and Singin' in the Rain are still iconic, and Gene Kelly's joyful dance in the rain remains one of the most famous scenes in movie history. The film's choreography and storytelling set a new standard for musicals. In 1953, she starred in The Affairs of Dobie Gillis as Pansy Hammer, a quirky and lovable character. The film was based on Max Schulman's popular stories, and Reynolds' performance brought humor and energy to the screen. It was a light-hearted romantic comedy that showed off her natural comedic timing. A year later, she took on a leading role in Susan Slept Here, 1954. She played Susan Beauregard Landis, a teenage delinquent who shakes up the life of a Hollywood screenwriter. Her mix of innocence and sass made the character stand out. This film helped cement her girl-next-door image and proved she had what it took to be a leading lady. Then came Tammy and The Bachelor in 1957, the role that became one of her most iconic. She played Tammy, a sweet and naive young woman who falls in love with an aristocrat. The film was a hit, but it wasn't just the story that won people over. The song Tammy, which she performed for the movie, became a sensation. Released in 1957, it topped the Billboard Disc Jockey Chart, the bestseller chart, and the Top 100 Composite Chart. It also earned her a gold record. In the UK, it reached #2 on the charts. The song was so popular that it even inspired Berry Gordy to name his first record label Tamla, which later became Motown Records. Reynolds wasn't just a singer and a comedy star. She could take on dramatic roles just as easily. In 1956, she proved that with two very different films. First, she starred in Bundle of Joy, a musical comedy where she played opposite her husband at the time, Eddie Fisher. The film was light and entertaining, and her performance earned her a Golden Globe nomination for Best Actress in a musical or comedy. The film's premiere also raised money for Hungarian refugees after the Hungarian Revolution, showing that her impact went beyond Hollywood. That same year, she took on a serious role in The Catered Affair. She played Jane Hurley, a young woman torn between her own dreams and her family's expectations. This role was a sharp contrast to her usual cheerful characters. Critics praised her performance, and the National Board of Review awarded her Best Supporting Actress. This film showed that Reynolds wasn't just a bubbly starlet. She could take on complex roles and bring real emotion to the screen. Debbie Reynolds reached a new career high in 19 1964 with the unsinkable Molly Brown. Her performance earned her an Academy Award nomination for Best Actress. It was the only Oscar nomination of her career, despite a lifetime of unforgettable roles. The film, directed by Charles Walters, was a Western musical comedy based on the real-life story of Margaret Molly Brown, a Titanic survivor known for her resilience and larger-than-life personality. Reynolds played Molly as a determined woman who fought her way from poverty to wealth, refusing to let anyone or anything stand in her way. The role demanded intense preparation. Reynolds trained in singing and dancing for elaborate musical sequences, pushing herself to match the energy and spirit of her character. One of the most memorable moments in the film was her performance of I Ain't Down Yet, a powerful anthem that captured Molly's unbreakable will. But Reynolds almost didn't get the part. The director originally wanted Shirley MacLaine. 6 weeks into production, Reynolds had proved herself so completely that she won him over. The competition for the Best Actress Oscar was fierce. Reynolds was up against Anne Bancroft, The Pumpkin Eater, Kim Stanley, Seance on a Wet Afternoon, Sophia Loren, Marriage Italian Style, and Julie Andrews, Mary Poppins. Andrews won the award, but many critics believed Reynolds' performance was just as deserving. The film itself was a hit, earning $11 million at the box office. Reynolds carried almost the entire film, appearing in nearly every scene. Her nomination confirmed what audiences already knew. She was one of the most talented stars of her time. Even without the Oscar win, the unsinkable Molly Brown remained one of the most celebrated performances of her career. Just 2 years earlier, Reynolds had already made a strong impression in How the West Was Won, 1962. The film was an epic Western that followed multiple generations of a family settling in America. It featured an all-star cast, including James Stewart and John Wayne, but Reynolds stood out as Lilith Prescott, the only character whose story continued through all 5 segments of the film. She played a determined woman making her way through the hardships of frontier life, proving her strength in both dramatic and musical moments. She also performed 3 songs, including Home in the Meadow, which added even more emotion to her role. The film was a massive success, earning over $50 million worldwide and winning 3 Academy Awards. It was one of Hollywood's most ambitious projects, filmed in Cinerama to create a sweeping, immersive experience. In 1966, Reynolds took on a completely different kind of role in The Singing Nun. She played Sister Anne, a character based on Belgian nun Janine Deckers, who became an international sensation with the song Dominique. Unlike her previous musical roles, this film had a more introspective tone. It told the story of a woman struggling with faith, fame, and personal sacrifice. Reynolds sang several songs herself, showing once again that she was more than just an actress. While the film received mixed reviews, critics praised Reynolds for bringing warmth and sincerity to the role. By the late 1960s, she began shifting away from films and into live performances, especially in Las Vegas. This transition was about more than just career choices. It was also a way to find stability after her divorce from Eddie Fisher. His affair with Elizabeth Taylor had been one of the biggest scandals in Hollywood, and Reynolds was left to rebuild her life. She made a bold move in 1962 by signing a $1 million contract for a residency at the Riviera Hotel and Casino. This deal gave her financial security and the freedom to control her own performances. Her Las Vegas shows became legendary. She performed 2 shows a night, 7 days a week, delivering a mix of music, comedy, and dance. Audiences loved her celebrity impersonations and the humorous monologues where she joked about her personal life. She combined elements of classic vaudeville with modern entertainment, proving that she could adapt to any era. Over the years, she performed at some of the biggest venues in Las Vegas, including Caesar's Palace and the Desert Inn. In 1993, she opened the Debbie Reynolds Hollywood Hotel and Casino, a place that reflected both her love for classic Hollywood and her deep connection to the entertainment world. Debbie Reynolds was one of Hollywood's brightest stars, but behind the glamour, her personal life was filled with heartbreak and betrayal. She married 3 times, and each relationship ended in devastation. Through it all, she never gave up. Her first marriage to Eddie Fisher in 1955 looked perfect from the outside. They had 2 children, Todd and Carrie, and were seen as the golden couple of Hollywood. That illusion shattered in 1958 1958 when Fisher left her for her close friend Elizabeth Taylor. The betrayal shocked the world. Taylor had just lost her husband, Mike Todd, in a plane crash. Fisher, who had been Todd's best man, stepped in to comfort her. Soon, that comfort turned into an affair. Reynolds had no idea until the press exposed it. The scandal was everywhere. The media turned against Taylor and Fisher, calling her a homewrecker and him an opportunist. Reynolds, heartbroken and humiliated, became the public's symbol of a woman scorned. Fisher's career never recovered. Sponsors pulled out of his television show, and he was forced to perform in small nightclubs. In 1959, Reynolds divorced him, allowing him to marry Taylor. Years later, she revealed she never blamed Taylor, believing she had been lost in grief and never truly loved Fisher. Time healed old wounds. In the 1970s, Reynolds and Taylor ran into each other on a cruise ship and laughed about their past. They even became friends again. Reynolds' second marriage in 1960 to businessman Harry Carl led to even greater trouble. At first, Carl seemed like the stable partner she needed, but behind the scenes, he had a gambling addiction that destroyed everything. He sometimes lost as much as $30,000 in a single day. He burned through his own fortune and then started using hers. By the early 1970s, he had drained $8 million from her savings. At one point, sheriffs arrived at their home to take it away due to unpaid debts. Their marriage lasted 13 years, but by 1973, Reynolds had nothing left to pay off the debt Carl had left behind. She worked non-stop, performing in nightclubs 42 weeks a year. She not only supported her own children, but also Carl's 3 children from his previous marriage and her elderly mother. If losing her money wasn't enough, Carl also humiliated her with his infidelity. He reportedly invited escorts into their home. Her daughter, Carrie Fisher, later said her mother had been destroyed by the marriage. Even after divorcing him, Reynolds was forced to file for bankruptcy in 1997, a painful reminder of the damage Carl had done. But she refused to be defeated. She paid off every debt and even opened the Debbie Reynolds Professional Studio for young performers. Her third marriage to real estate developer Richard Hamlet in 1984 turned out to be the most terrifying of all. He swept her off her feet, proposing on their first date, but the happiness didn't last. He convinced her to invest in a Las Vegas casino called the Paddle Wheel Hotel. It was a disaster. The hotel failed, and by 1997, Reynolds was bankrupt again. Hamlet's financial betrayals went beyond bad investment. He secretly transferred properties to his girlfriend and his brother, making sure Reynolds had no control over them. She later admitted she feared for her life. In her memoir, Unsinkable, she described one night when they argued on a hotel balcony. She looked at him and wondered if he might push her off. That was how bad things had become. She finally divorced him in 1996, paying him $270,000 to buy out his share of their failing business. By the end of it all, Reynolds had no fortune left, but she had something more valuable: her strength. She once said all 3 of her husbands had robbed her blind, but they never broke her spirit. Debbie Reynolds had a way of making people fall in love with her, no matter the decade. In the mid-1990s, she made a big return to the big screen with Mother in 1996 and In and Out in 1997. Mother, directed by Albert Brooks, gave her the perfect role. She played a sharp but loving mother whose complicated relationship with her son was both funny and deeply moving. Critics praised her performance, and she earned a Golden Globe nomination for Best Actress in a Motion Picture, Musical, or Comedy. It was proof that even after decades in Hollywood, she still had that special spark. The following year, she played another mother in and Out, but this time, her character was lighthearted and full of humor. The film centered around a teacher navigating an unexpected public outing, and Reynolds played his supportive mother with warmth and charm. Audiences loved her, and she received a nomination for Favorite Supporting Actress, Comedy, at the Blockbuster Entertainment Awards. These roles weren't just nostalgic appearances. They showed that Reynolds could still shine in modern films and hold her own alongside younger co-stars. At a time when many actresses from her era had stepped away from Hollywood, she proved that talent and charisma never fade. Her dedication to entertainment didn't go unnoticed. In 2015, she received the Screen Actors Guild Life Achievement Award, the highest honor given by the organization. The award recognized not just her work in film, television, television and theater, but also her efforts beyond acting. She had spent years raising awareness for mental health, particularly through the Thalians, an organization she co-founded. SAG-AFTRA President Ken Howard called her a tremendously talented performer and praised her for embodying the finest ideals of the acting profession. In 2016, the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences honored her with the Jean Hersholt Humanitarian Award, a prestigious Oscar given to those who make a lasting impact through philanthropy. By then, Reynolds' health had declined, and she was unable to attend the ceremony. Her granddaughter, Billie Lourd, accepted the award on her behalf. These honors were a fitting tribute to a woman who had given so much to the industry. From her breakout role in Three Little Words in 1950 to her unforgettable performances in Singin, In the Rain, and the unsinkable Molly Brown, she had built a career that few could match. Even in her final years, she was still finding ways to connect with audiences. In 2016, she and her daughter, Carrie Fisher, starred in Bright Lights, starring Carrie Fisher and Debbie Reynolds, an HBO documentary that offered an intimate look at their complicated but loving relationship. The film, directed by Alexis Bloom and Fisher Stevens, premiered at the Cannes Film Festival before airing on HBO in January 2017. By then, both Reynolds and Fisher had passed away, just one day apart in December 2016, making the film an even more emotional experience for audiences. The documentary blended interviews, home videos, and behind-the-scenes moments from their lives. One of the most touching scenes showed Fisher helping her mother prepare for her SAG Lifetime Achievement Award, a quiet moment of love and support between two Hollywood legends. Critics called the film a powerful farewell, showing Reynolds' strength even as her health declined and capturing Fisher's sharp wit as she navigated life in the spotlight. But acting was only one part of Reynolds' love for Hollywood. She was also one of the most passionate collectors of movie history. Her journey as a collector began in 1970 when MGM decided to auction off its massive archive of costumes and props. Reynolds was horrified at the thought of these treasures being lost or scattered, so she spent her own money to save as many pieces as possible. Over the years, she built one of the largest private collections in the world, featuring more than 5,000 costumes, 20,000 photographs, and countless props. Among her most prized items were Marilyn Monroe's white dress from The 7-Year Itch, Judy Garland's ruby slippers from The Wizard of Oz, and Charlie Chaplin's bowler hat. But for Reynolds, collecting wasn't about owning valuable items. She believed these costumes carried history, saying, "These pieces are cultural touchstones that still carry the energy of the stars who performed in them. There is magic in every thread, button, and bow." She dreamed of opening a museum to showcase these treasures, but despite her efforts, she couldn't secure the funding or institutional support needed to make it happen. Financial struggles forced her to auction off much of her collection between 2011 and 2014. The sales brought in millions. Monroe's dress alone sold for $4.6 million, but Reynolds was heartbroken to let go of what she had spent decades preserving. In the early 1990s, she tried to create a home for her collection by purchasing a struggling Las Vegas hotel. She renamed it the Debbie Reynolds Hotel and Casino in 1993 and filled it with her Hollywood memorabilia. She even performed live shows there 5 nights a week to attract visitors. But the casino was small, and without a proper gaming license, it never brought in enough revenue. By 1997, deep in debt, Reynolds filed for bankruptcy. The hotel was sold at auction the following year. Reflecting on the loss, she called it a sad ending to a lot of hard work and special dreams, but insisted, "You can't look back." Even as financial challenges forced her to part with her beloved collection, her efforts to preserve Hollywood history didn't go unnoticed. In 2005, the Costume Designers Guild honored her with its President's Award, recognizing her work in protecting classic Hollywood fashion. Her collection had included costumes from nearly every major film of the Golden Age, from My Fair Lady to Cleopatra. She saw herself not just as a collector, but as a guardian of film history. Debbie Reynolds spent more than 70 years in Hollywood, but she never lost her sense of wonder. Even in her final years, she spoke about her life with gratitude, amazed by how she had ended up in show business. In 2013, shortly after releasing her memoir, Unsinkable, she sat down for an interview with Inside Edition. conversation. She talked about her childhood, her rise to fame, and the struggles she faced along the way. She had never expected to be a star. No one in her family was in show business, yet at 19, she landed a role in Singin' in the Rain. The 1952 film turned her into an overnight sensation. More roles followed, including The Unsinkable Molly Brown in 1964, which earned her an Academy Award nomination. Her career flourished, but her personal life was often difficult. One of her biggest heartbreaks came in 1958 when her husband, Eddie Fisher, left her for Elizabeth Taylor. The scandal dominated headlines. Years later, Reynolds revealed that Frank Sinatra had warned her against marrying Fisher, saying that singers couldn't be trusted. She wished she had listened. Still, she refused to let the betrayal define her. She kept moving forward, focusing on her work and raising her children. She often joked about her resilience, once saying, "I am going to sing and dance and act silly until I just kick it." Her relationship with her daughter, Carrie Fisher, was one of the most important parts of her life. It wasn't always easy. Carrie's struggles with bipolar disorder and addiction created distance between them, and for 10 years, they barely spoke. But they found their way back to each other. In later years, they became closer than ever, performing together and sharing a deep understanding that only a mother and daughter could have. On December 27, 2016, Carrie Fisher passed away at age 60 after suffering a heart attack. The next day, while making funeral arrangements, Reynolds sat with her son, Todd Fisher, and spoke words that would soon take on a haunting meaning. "I miss her so much. I want to be with Carrie." Hours later, she suffered a stroke. She was rushed to Cedars-Sinai Medical Center in Los Angeles, but passed away at age 84. The world was stunned. The idea that she had died just one day after her daughter felt almost too tragic to believe. Todd Fisher later said he didn't think she died of a broken heart. He believed she made a choice. Fans and the media saw it as proof of the unbreakable bond between mother and daughter. Even in death, they could not be separated. Reynolds was more than just a Hollywood legend. She was a tireless advocate for mental health. In 1955, she helped found the Thalians, a charity focused on raising money for mental health programs. Over the decades, the Thalians donated millions to organizations, including UCLA's Operation Mend, which supports military veterans suffering from PTSD. By 2014, they had raised over $35 million. She also supported AIDS awareness long before it was widely discussed. As early as 1983, she hosted fundraisers and donated money to the cause. At a time when few public figures were willing to speak out, Reynolds used her platform to help those in need.